All right, let's quickly now play out a conversation that we had with experts on the NCB dragging its feet in the Aryan Khan case, where 90 more days have been asked for a charge sheet. All right, so approaching the end of its 6-month deadline to frame charges against Shah Rukh Khan's son Aryan Khan in the drugs on cruise case, the Narcotics Control Bureau sought more time to build its case, saying that its investigations are still going on. The agency in its plea cited a prime witness turning hostile as one of the reasons for its request to extend the deadline by another 90 days. The agency was supposed to submit its charge sheet by the 2nd of April. In its application before the special judge, V.V. Patil, filed on Monday, the probe agency said that substances seized on the drugs on cruise case in which Aryan Khan is accused number 1 were narcotics that come under the ambit of NDPS Act. This probe agency further stated that some of the accused are highly influential, have incriminating chats with foreign nationals who are located outside India also. But the problem is, and that's the point that we are talking about here, that the law says you must file a charge sheet in 90 days. To now plead that we need another 90 days, is this a case of the drug agency not just missing the deadline, but dragging its feet in this investigation? I would like to welcome our guest this evening. We've got Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court and also the former Additional Solicitor General Vikas Singh. He'll be joining us in a moment. Vikram Singh, former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, and Abhishek Tripathi, BJP supporter and filmmaker and columnist, is also with us. Abhishek, I want to begin with you first. Why should the NCB not face charges or be accused of dragging its feet? I mean, it had 90 days.
No, what happens is when you're doing a bigger investigation of this level, where we got to know 6 months back that there could be many people within India, outside India could be involved by the chats that were there. If you're doing that level of investigation, you need more time. And this is within the legal framework, as I know, that agency can still apply for, extension in terms of filing a charge sheet. So I don't think this is for the first time which is happening that any, which has crossed 90 days and agency is still applying for.
So you're saying that this is not for the first time that the agency has missed a deadline, and it has happened in previous cases also. So a case of the agency dragging its feet is not made out. Advocate Vikas Singh is now with us. Mr. Singh, what is your assessment? Do you feel that the agency is deliberately keeping this case going, not filing a charge sheet, and saying the same old things that it said earlier, and in 90 days nothing has changed?
Well, Sanket, I've been saying right from the beginning that there was no case made out under the NDPS as far as Aryan Khan is concerned. There was no recovery. There was no allegation of consumption. Even if there is a case of consumption and if a drug addict also is found on the street, they don't take him to jail. You send him to a rehab center. So there was no case whatsoever made out. It was basically, according to me, wrong handling by the legal team of SRK, which did not go to the High Court straight away. If they had gone to the High Court straight away, this initial remand also should not have happened. Now, having said that, the agency is such, and I have dealt with the government being Additional Solicitor General. It's very unfortunate. It's very difficult for them to admit their mistake. And they will dilly-dally like this so that it gets out of the public memory, and then when someday it is quashed, people will forget whatever this officer Wankhede had done in this matter and, harass somebody, some innocent person like this. So idea is to somehow delay so much that, because it is a celebrity involved here, probably they may not succeed because people like you will be tracking this case, and whenever it is closed, it will get all the media space that it deserves of a high-handed prosecution attempt to somehow tarnish or to somehow, implicate.
But Mr. Vikas Singh, at some point they will have to file a charge sheet. So no matter how much they may procrastinate, at some point they will have to file the charge sheet, because if they don't.
What they do normally in such matters is, and because of especially the media glare, and especially because they are going to come under so much of flag, that they will file some kind of a, untenable charge sheet. just to get over this matter, and which will get quashed by the court. And harassment will continue till then when the charge sheet is filed, and the person will have to visit the police station and etc. And the travel restrictions have all been imposed upon him. Those will all remain. So that all will happen. Unfortunately, that's a very unfortunate thing in our jurisprudence, in our criminal justice system, that a person has to suffer all this, even if there is a completely. So I would have, if they had gone to the High Court on the first day, probably the remand would not have happened. Probably the case would have been quashed at the first instance. But having gone the wrong route and the long route of going to a trial court, that to a wrong court, then going to the right court, and then suffering an order, and then coming in to the High Court ultimately, which ruled in their favor, and he was released. They are now stuck, having taken the initial wrong route. And so now, according to me, even now somebody should advise them to file a quashing petition directly in the High Court.
Sure.
And if that is filed, that was one way of,
Okay. Okay. DGP Vikram Singh, I want to come to you now. Vikas Singh says that it's very hard for agencies to admit that they've gone wrong, that they've made a mistake. And thus they would procrastinate, they would have a very protracted negotiation, they would want, extensions to file a charge sheet. You really think that this is how an investigation of this kind can be done? More of an ego battle than actual reality?
Mr. Upadhyay, I am in total agreement with Mr. Vikas Singh. There's always a best way of doing everything. Just as you have fast-track courts, you also have an expeditious investigation. This is not a routine investigation. This is one investigation and a case in which not only everybody in India, but the people from world over were eyeing and watching what the developments were. There were multiple flaws in the investigation. One, that the witnesses in the search and seizure operations appeared to be compromised. Number two, signatures are never taken in the receipt memo by the recovery officer himself. That was taken. I could go on, and perhaps the conduct of Wankhede itself leaves much to be desired. There's so much of talk, I would not like to go into that. But the fact of the matter is that when such a sensitive case, one takes pains, the entire might of the Narcotics Control Bureau was there at the beck and call of the investigation. I see no reason why one witness has turned hostile, and yet people are marking time. So for what? At the end of the day, you might have even more witnesses going hostile, material and exhibits being compromised. And I can assure you, I do not see a very rosy picture as far as the charge sheet is concerned and the outcome of the case. Under these circumstances, I'm very disappointed. I had expected a lot more from the NCB and the top officers
but
there.
Vikas Singh, quickly coming back to you, assuming that the NCB and the charges that it is making out are correct, purely assuming, do the material that they have in their possession add up and justify that charge that they're leveling? I mean, they talk about an international conspiracy, an international racket.
So Sanket, let me assume just for the sake of, giving some kind of credence to what the NCB is saying, let me assume that there are some phone call details in the phone of Aryan Khan. Let me assume that's the best case that they'll have. Now the phone call details at best will lead them to a supplier. He will not become a supplier because of those phone calls. So the phone calls at best can be, the questioning can be, how did you get this number? Who are these people? That's the maximum question that you can do to a person of this kind. Because this entire jurisprudence, this entire branch of criminal jurisprudence is based on recovery. In fact, the quantum of sentence is determined on the basis of recovery. A small quantity gets you the 1 year sentence, medium quantity gets you 10 years, and a commercial quantity gets you 20 years. So if there is no recovery, there is no case. I don't understand. And you are now wanting to fix him as a supplier or a peddler of drugs. Now, peddler of drugs is not your case. Your case at best can be that you are in touch with some peddler of drugs. That will not make you a peddler of drugs. So,
Abhishek Tripathi, do you feel that this is a case where the NCB realized that it has nothing on an individual and thus wants to build up a case, a new case, a fresh case?
No, this is something very hypothetical. You can't really assume how they are building up the case. But just in case they get the permission from the court to file and further date, We'll definitely come to know someday what the charge sheet says.
Don't you think the NCB then will have to face allegations of making this investigation extremely protracted? खींच रहे हो आप उसको जबरदस्ती.
Let's be very fair. If they are wrong, they'll be exposed. If they are right, there'll be a correct
No,
charge
but
sheet.
then, you know, this whole concept of making the process itself the punishment, how would you respond?
No. I wouldn't say that, because we are discussing right now, which is we are yet to know. When the charge sheet come exactly, we'll know exactly where we
DGP
stand.
Vikram Singh, do you
We
feel
can
that,
only assume.
Do you feel that you know, there will be allegations against the NCB of making the process itself the punishment?
Obviously, there are bound to be allegations, and the allegations have started coming in then, and now there seems to be multiple allegations. Firstly, if this was such a high-profile case, what were you banking on? Why did you not expeditiously put every ounce of your energy in completing the investigation in good time? You did not. Now you're asking for time. One witness has already turned hostile. This speaks about the prowess of the investigation. I do hope they have taken statement under 164 of the CRPC, and if not, well, God save them.
All right. Vikram Singh, Abhishek Tripathi as well as Vikas Singh, thank you very much for joining us.